I wouldn't blame you if you haven't seen it, but a year and a half ago I uploaded a video where I opened the 100 lockbox keys that I used to keep for transferring over to the test server. As a result of that, I have 450 Lobi on my character, and since I really wanted to get videos about this year's winter event ship out before Christmas, I'm going to go ahead and click the button. So here we go. I've done 11 out of 20. That brings the buyout price down to 450, which is exactly what I have. So let's go ahead and click it, and now we can resume the review. The Tamarian Deep Space Cruiser is a surprisingly versatile and relatively powerful ship with good stats and a support-focused accessory package for an event ship. That's not to discredit it though, as it's well worth the asking price of 20 fastest on ice challenges. With a turn rate of 12 paired with a hull and shield modifier of 1.5 and 1.2 respectively, it makes few trade-offs when it comes to maneuverability and durability. Sporting 2 universal seats and 2 specialization seats, it feels like a premium ship from the earlier days of the game before we all started expecting full specializations as the default. Packing in a Lieutenant Commander Command and a Lieutenant Intel seat, it has a lot to offer different playstyles. In terms of overall stats, it reminds me of the Tholian Tarantula Dreadnought Cruiser, which has a similar bridge officer layout and modifiers, but with half the turn rate and a worse weapon layout at 4.4 instead of the Tamarian's 5.3. With ISO-mags existing in the game now, you could even argue the Tamarian console layout is better since you can squeeze in one more ISO-mag with its 5.24 compared to the Tholian's 4.34. If you wanted to stick to tactical consoles, it can use just as many, so there's no downsides there. You can get 4 science and 2 intel abilities on the Tamarian if you're chasing control ability spam or science spam for all the synergies that can provide with various traits like Uncon. You can slot both Concentrate Firepower 3 and a Rank 3 torpedo firing mode of your choice at the same time with the 2 different Lieutenant Commander seats. It's not going to make the best torpedo platform in the world, but it's quite capable. However, it's not all guns and roses. You see, you get it because you put weapons on a starship and guns are weapons and... oh, never mind. The Tamarian Deep Space Cruiser also shares one of the Tarantula's greatest weaknesses, an unvarnished commander engineering seat. In 2023, soon to be 2024, that's a hard pill to swallow. But it's not as bad as it first appears. The ship would absolutely benefit from being a full command ship, so that it could use suppression barrage or call emergency artillery or any of the other commander specialization abilities that are good. However, it wouldn't benefit very much from having a commander tactical or a commander science instead of engineering, and here's why. Without the ability to use dual cannons, the need for CSV3 is non-existent. All of the beam and torpedo firing modes cap out at Lieutenant Commander, so you aren't making any sacrifices there. If it were a Commander Science seat, you'd have to use the Command seat for engineering if you wanted to get emergency power to Weapons 3, where that conflict currently doesn't exist. For a budget player, the Commander Engineering seat is perfect for an aux to bat setup, and it's the only forced engineering seat, so you aren't left with a bunch of engineering slots you wish were something else. The worst case scenario is that you have to use Emit Unstable Warp Plasma as a control proc, or Reverse Shield Polarity for survival, or Energy Modulation for some extra energy weapon damage. It's not ideal, of course, but it isn't the deal breaker it's sometimes made out to be, especially on a free ship. I should also mention that even though it doesn't have a Commander Command seat, it does come with the full Command Inspiration abilities, which are quite powerful and do make a difference, not only in terms of power, but also in terms of it feeling like a premium ship. And with that, let's discuss the console and trait. Starting with the console, Polarity Coil Generator. I was disappointed by this, mostly because I was hoping it would be better. It provides you with a passive effect that causes energy weapons to deal kinetic damage to foes targeted by shield systems offline. I'm still not 100% sure how it works though, because it has a 10-second lockout between triggers. Is the damage only applied once per 10 seconds max? Is it while the shields are offline, but if they come back online, it takes 10 seconds before it can trigger again if they come back down? Is it per foe? I think the answer to that is yes. No debuff status appears on enemies, and I can't see a status buff on myself, so the whole thing is a little bit of a mystery. After inspecting a few parses, And examining the blog post again, which reads, quote, "This console also provides a passive ability which deals a large amount of additional kinetic damage when firing upon a ship affected by the shield's offline status, parentheses, once every 10 seconds. My best guess right now is that it's a per foe, one-time lump of damage that's conditioned on both the shields being offline and it having been at least 10 seconds since that foe last received damage from this effect. It hardly matters though, since the damage is not good. I paired it with carrier wave shield hacking to ensure that I was causing as many shields to go offline as frequently as possible, and in every parse it ended up doing about 1000 DPS, which puts it into the massive pile of similar consoles that nobody uses. The kinetic damage can be increased by anything that boosts kinetic damage or all damage, but you'd be better off buffing pretty much anything else, unless you're doing that already for a torpedo build, but then you aren't going to have very many, if any, energy weapons to apply the kinetic damage, so the synergy doesn't really work out there. If you're buffing kinetic damage, you don't have energy weapons to get the effect, and if you're using energy weapons, you're probably not buffing kinetic damage, so make of that what you will. It does have a clicky, which causes an AoE shield's offline status to the targeted foe and other foes within 5 kilometers for a few seconds. The duration can be extended by drain expertise, but stacking that just for this effect doesn't seem like a great idea. The trait, Darmok and Jalad, is what you would get if you turned Suppression Barrage 2 into a starship trait with conditions and limitations, void where prohibited, not applicable in Michigan. Once per foe, damaging an unshielded enemy applies a debuff that disables them for 6 seconds and reduces their outgoing damage by 1/3 for 60 seconds. You also get 10% Captain Recharge reduction. I can't find anything that buffs these values, but I didn't exhaust all possibilities in that pursuit either. This isn't a bad trait. 33% is the same amount offered by Suppression Barrage 2, and the 60-second time limit is unlikely to matter since few things will ever live that long to begin with. However, using an entire starship trait for a brief disable, a weak version of Suppression Barrage, and a watered-down Intelligent Agent Attaché isn't a good idea if you've got anything better. If you were just trying to put together an affordable tank build, however, this is definitely a solid contender, so I'm not saying it's useless, just a bit underwhelming. And that kind of highlights the through line here. Nothing about the Tamarian Deep Space Cruiser is bad. Some of it's actually surprisingly decent or good, but none of it is excellent. Judged against the standards of other event ships we've gotten, it holds up pretty well if you're looking for something to actually fly rather than scrapping it for parts. But some people might be disappointed that it doesn't have an outlier like Cold-Hearted or the Soliton Wave Impeller for them to take and put on their other ships. And that's understandable. Rather than giving it a bunch of different star ratings like I used to, I'm just going to give it a thumbs up. I think it's a good ship, it's fun to fly, anyone who actually needs an event ship will find it more than sufficient with great stats, flexible seating, and premium features.